This is r/MilitaryStories, where OP comes right back from war only to discover his wife has gotten remarried and has 3 kids. My name is Trey, and welcome back to Reload Reacts. This first post is by Forward Storm. So I couldn't figure out why my partner would come home from a 4-month deployment rotation he wasn't even supposed to go to in the first place, because we just had a baby. So he leaves, comes back home maybe a week, leaves again and again, and then keeps going on these top secret TDYs. So I'm like, okay, I'm worried about this baby, but he quit FaceTiming, calling, sending long texts. He comes home and says it's depression and isn't romantically connected to me anymore. I find all this stuff, and long story short, he's cheating with the captain he works with every day that I thought had a fiance. I met them and everything. He goes to coffee with her, eats lunch and gets drunk with her, buys her gifts and goes to her house. She's doing the same thing for him, knowing damn well I have a baby at home and had met me. He lied to me every time I asked about it. Said why would I do that? I didn't go there. Also their friends are in on it too, because he cooked for them on Christmas while my son and I were visiting family in a different state. So yeah, crazy. That is crazy. What a story to start off with. Isn't that kinda insane? It isn't unheard of, you know. You have the wife at home while the husband's gone off to war. He comes back, wife is pregnant, she's cheated, or he's cheated. I feel like it's more crazy that he's cheated while he's been at war. That's actually crazy. According to the comments, that's also 2 UCMJ violations, which is the Uniform Code of Military Justice, fraternization and adultery, which carry punitive actions. So hopefully they actually get punished for that. That's crazy. I'm sorry you had to experience that, OP. This next post is by Unsuspect Goblin. I feel like starting off by stating that I was discharged after only a year and a half during the quarantine due to several mental issues that I sorta knew about but hid during the whole recruitment process. Another stereotype right there. Anyway, this takes place towards the end of my basic combat training at Fort Benning. We were in the field doing some sort of training, and during a break I decided to field strip my M4 to do a little bit of cleaning, when my autistic brain decided that I wanted to take apart the bolt of my M4 further than I was supposed to. That's the type of shit I would do. I immediately dropped my firing pin retaining pin onto the foliage covered ground and couldn't find it to save my life, and I knew we were about to start moving soon. So I took my notebook, bent off a piece of the metal spiral binding thing, and jammed it into where the pin would go and prayed for my life. I have no idea why. I know it shouldn't have, but that rifle literally never worked better than with that stupid, delicate piece of metal jammed into the bolt. I made it all the way through the forge without any jamming, with a rifle that I had to previously operate like a Nerf gun if it was even slightly raining. Multiple times my rifle was used to dump excess blank rounds through at the end of training exercises. Fast forward to the end of the basic combat training, when we were all deep cleaning all the firearms for turning in, and I knew I was I had originally planned on pulling the pin from the bolt of my AR-15 at home on Christmas Eve, but was way too drunk to remember to do that. Anyways, I was cleaning my M4 when I looked up to the center of the bay where the M4s that weren't used, the couple of soldiers that had been moved or processed out for injuries and such, were, and saw the one with my old bunkmate's number on it. He was some general's son that had been moved to a different unit after calling, well, screaming, another soldier the N-word. Classy. I just stood up, walked over and brought it over to my bunk and pulled out the pin and put it into my rifle. I don't think anyone noticed, because nobody really liked me, so I feel like if they did they would rat me out. So yeah, that's how I got away with something incredibly stupid in basic combat training. Don't know if anyone will think it's as funny as I do, but I may just be bad at telling stories. No, that's funny as hell. I can't believe you actually got away with that. To be able to use like a diary piece, put it into your gun, it worked better than the original gun, and then you had to come back You're about to be screwed and all of a sudden a gun appears right in front of you from a morally bad dude and you grabbed that piece and put it in and you were fine? That's crazy. That is crazy luck. The odds in that are like 1 in a million. And because it's the general's son, nothing will probably happen either. Get pushed under the carpet, they already have ties to the military, so it's unlikely that they'll do anything about it. This next post is by a deleted user. Prologue. Due to a combination of wildly over-optimistic academic goals and a fear of commitment, my first enlistment was in the US Army Reserves. I wanted to jump out of aeroplanes and shoot machine guns in order to pay for college, and Uncle Sugar extended an invitation to do all of that, so long as I made a 6-year commitment to be all I could be TM, 1 weekend each month and 2 weekends each year. My initial employment training was scheduled to be about 9 months long, basic training at Fort Jackson for around 9 weeks, a number of months of AIT at Fort Huachuca, all capped off by a 3-week visit to Fort Benning to enjoy the gentle ministrations of the Black Hats at Airborne School. Through some heinous at MEPS on the day of my departure, I'd end up adding another month plus to my initial employment training time, waiting in holdover status for security clearance paperwork to catch up with me. All in all, I was gone for more than 10 months, an important number going forward when things went a bit pear-shaped. Private OP wrapped up initial employment training and finally came home, all fired up and still reeking of that new private smell, and quickly reported to his unit. First day of my first drill weekend, I'm called in front of formation and am promoted to Private 2, and then again immediately to Private First Class. I probably still compete for the record for shortest time in grade for a Private 2 at under 5 minutes. After the laughter died down, the commander tells us he had bad news. The unit's being decommissioned and we have to find a new home. Cue sad trombone. What have I gotten myself into? The options were simple. We could transfer to another reserve unit, if there was space, find a National Guard slot, if there was space, or terminate our enlistment contracts without penalty, but also without access to the GI Bill and other benefits. The nuclear option was to apply for an active duty slot with the regular army. As it turned out that I quite enjoyed soldiering and was too broke to afford college tuition, that last option piqued my interest. The problem was this: everyone was eyeballing the military as a career option. This was the mid-90s and the economy was very uncertain, which meant the job market was shit, and the US was still riding high on post-Gulf War I, the Gulfening patriotism. So recruiters in all branches of the armed forces were spoiled for choice and going gangbusters in their business. Because my initial employment time exceeded 6 months, I was classified as prior service active duty, which put me pretty far down the depth chart as far as applicants went. It took some aggressive footwork and a lot of patience, but nearly a year later, I was able to snag an active duty slot, the build-up. In the spirit of things that make no sense, I was reassigned to an Army Basic Training Battalion, this time at Fort Leonard Wood, along with about 150 other prior service troops to await PCS orders to my first active duty unit. No joke. As a prior service active duty soldier, one couldn't just slide right out of a reserve slot and into an active slot. We had to be properly re-indoctrinated, and the only place we could do that was apparently Missouri. What have I gotten myself into? Here's where things start to get fun. We had all sorts in our company. With 150 or so troops in the company, we had everything from 11Bs to comms folks to personnel clerks to intel weenies like me, as well as a handful of prior service Marines. We even had a Special Forces tabbed Sergeant First Class, and not one, but 2 Ranger tabbed Sergeants, all of whom were combat vets of Gulf War I. Through dumb luck, I wound up in the same squad, such as it was, with these bad. Thankfully, the indoctrination process wouldn't really require us to actually repeat basic training, While we were officially assigned as trainees, what we were really there for was to redo all of our paperwork, update vaccinations, draw new uniforms and gear, and then hurry up and wait for PCS orders. We lived in the basic training barracks and ate in the basic training dining facility, but were fairly strictly segregated from the actual trainees. For about 2 weeks, the daily routine involved morning PT followed by a generally mindless detail, base police call, raking leaves, etc. And we were usually released after lunch to do whatever we wanted for the rest of the day. Not a bad gig, and inarguably the only way to enjoy a place like Fort Leonard Wood. Upon drawing new uniforms, we were explicitly cautioned against taking them to any of the off-base cleaners for installation of rank insignia, badges, combat patches, etc. This was back in the day of battle dress uniforms, when everything was sewn on. Because our orders could come down at any moment with minimal time to prep for departure, they didn't want us risking abandoning our new gear. This didn't stop anyone from doing just that, because a bit of visible rank was a reliable way of inoculating us. So generally, we each had at least one battle dress uniform, topped with all the G-gauze we'd earned, but our field jackets were almost completely sterile. The payoff. Very early one morning, some of my squad is tasked to prep one of the rangers for actual trainees. I promised a couple hours worth of work, with the rest of the day off. At about 5:30 AM on a chilly October morning, we're corralled into the back of a 5-ton truck for the drive to the range. Sergeant First Class Tabbed Dude is our nominal platoon sergeant, and we have one of the sergeant rangers on board too. It's too early for much joking, but the conversation is light, and we're expecting nothing beyond a quick police call, maybe raking some rocks, and then breakfast. What we get is a little bit different. The 5-ton lands at the range and immediately we hear shouting. This is gonna be good. The back gate is dropped and a bevy of drill sergeants are there to greet us in their own inimitable way. Flashbacks to basic training. We're too slow for them, because f*** them, but also because f*** them. We're not trainees. They don't care and they start to pick us apart individually. One of them instantly locks onto Sergeant Ranger, who's sporting a Ranger roll in his patrol cap. Oh, what do we have here? A Ranger wannabe? Who the f*** do you think you are wearing your headgear like that, Private? Rabble, rabble, rabble. Sergeant Ranger is both irritated and nonplussed. Remarkable, really. It's too early for this. And given his service record, it's simultaneously too late for this. We're all caught off guard, mouths agape. Sergeant Ranger collects himself and casually drops down from the 5-ton, and the following exchange occurs. Listen, he begins as he starts to unzip his virtually sterile field jacket. Until you have one of these, points to airborne wings with combat jumpstar, or one of these, sliding one arm out of the jacket and pointing to his Ranger tab, or one of these, shedding the field jacket completely and pointing to a combat Ranger scroll. Then you can talk to me like that, but until then, you will shut the f*** up. Those last words vibrated among us. Time froze. So too the air around us. Tunnel vision ensued, and the whiff of a Wild West showdown permeated everything. Drill sergeants frozen mid-shout, furiously scrambling to do the mental math to figure out what comes next. A scenario that clearly was not covered in any training block at the Drill Sergeant's Academy. This is fun. Finally, one of the Drill Sergeant's CPU catches up to the situation and he speaks. Who the f*** are you? Sergeant First Class Tab Dude has quite enjoyed this, but intervenes. He quickly jumps down out of the 5-ton and introduces himself and us. We're all prior service, Drill Sergeant. On casual status, just waiting for orders. They told us to report here and give you guys an assist. I'm Sergeant First Class Tabbed Guy, and extends a hand as a means of introduction. The last remnants of confusion settle into the dirt as the situation starts to come into focus. The drill sergeants look at each other and then back at us, and as the resolution improves, so does their demeanor. Some nervous laughter. Well, f*** me, one of them says, No one told us anything about prior service. They just told us to be here to meet a truck full of soldiers from one of the training companies. So you guys got one of our performances. Sergeant Ranger has made his point and he's not an asshole, so no hard feelings. We get briefed on what we're expected to do and where to find the right tools. The drills see an opportunity for a relatively easy start to their duty day, so they're happy to leave us be. A couple of them jet to the dining facility with the promise of returning with a hot coffee and something to eat to make amends. And that's how I got to see a basic training trainee tell a US Army drill sergeant to shut the fuck up and not only survive, but also earn an apology and coffee for it. Absolute cinema. That was crazy. You should always know who you're yelling at because you never know what could happen, right? The fact that they just assumed that they were wearing fake clothes. This was r/military stories. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to go check out some other videos on the channel. And also make sure to go hit that subscribe button as I post new Reddit content every single day.